Hey everyone, and welcome to an operator's blog. In this episode, we will be going deep into building a prosumer AI startup. Joining me today is Pratyush Rai, co founder of Merlin. Merlin is an AI productivity assistant that lets you do everything from getting one click answers to summarizing and repurposing content and much, much more. Pratyush is an IIT grad, worked for BCG before partnering up with a couple of his batchmates and starting Merlin, and now has scaled it to 2 million users. And Pratyush, I want to extend my congratulations, and actually, it makes me very, very proud to say that Merlin was included in A16Z's top 50 AI apps list where startups are spending the most money. So, congrats for this feat, especially building from India for the world, and great to have you with us for this episode.
Thank you so much for inviting Soumitra. I really love all our conversations and what you are doing with Operators Blog. We're really very grateful for getting this opportunity to talk to your regular audience.
Yes, and I'm very excited about this because I don't think there is too much out there with respect to building an AI native prosumer startup, and that too you have an India to the world angle. So I think there's going to be a lot of curiosity around this episode. So let's get right down to it, and I'm going to put you kind of in the hot seat straight away, right? So Pratyush, if you look at the kind of AI ecosystem, right, there's a lot going on, right? So of course the foundational model companies are doing incredible work. Now there is the whole infra layer. You have agents, you have co-pilots, you have kind of the whole dev tools cycle going on right now. There's a lot of moving parts in the ecosystem, right? From your kind of vantage point, both of course as a founder, but also as an observer in the ecosystem, what parts of the ecosystem do you feel are actually underhyped, which are not in the Twitter zeitgeist, so to speak?
Yeah. I think there are two parts to it. One is underhyped and second is Twitter zeitgeist, and I'll address both independently. I think in one specific area which is not as much in the Twitter zeitgeist is vertical AI, mainly because if you look at it, most of these companies have very, very niche GTM angles which do not involve social media as much as the traditional agents, co-pilots, and other categories, right? um, and I think there is a lot of value to be accrued in the vertical AI space, mainly because you need a little bit of expertise in that market in order to get started. The GTM is very unique with respect to every business. You cannot like have one standardized GTM which works across all. For example, one of my friends, he sells to beauty parlors in US. For them, the GTM is very simple. They just find the phone number of the parlor from Google Maps. They have scraped all of that and they just directly call them, right? Now, this kind of a GTM is very hard to replicate in other categories where the parlor owner is different from the manager, right? And so you can see that like there are so many independent nuances. And if you look at any vertical category, most of the time they have very unique GTM angle and they also have a very unique timing. So I think it's very underhyped and not at all part of the Twitter zeitgeist. If I come back to the first part, which is just in general, what are some of the categories which are underhyped? I believe that agents in true sense are still underhyped. While there is one part of it which is that every company is now trying to position themselves as a agentic AI company and and trying to get into the bandwagon. But if you look at like true agents which can do tasks end to end in the way in which we imagine AI to be like in movies and whatnot, right? I think it's still not there yet for a lot of categories. I think it is there in a specific niche wherein like you have a particular set of tasks which are very straightforward and can be automated in a very good way. I have a very good example for that for what that looks like, right? So we use this very interesting product which helps us answer questions on our Google on our meta ads essentially. So whenever you get comments on meta ads, a lot of them are spam, a lot of them are competitor induced comments and so on. So this tool, for a very, very cheap price, around $100 or so on a monthly level, it helps address all these comments in a very smart way, probably better than what I would have addressed myself, right? Now this workflow is a very contained workflow wherein you have a very clear problem statement that you get a lot of spammy comments, a lot of competitor comments, and a lot of like legitimate comments from users trying to get answers to their questions. And it's very hard to maintain a visibility on all these comments across so many campaigns, right? but this product is able to address this problem very sharply and at a very low price versus what I would have been able to do. So I think this is an example of a true agentic AI, wherein you are having a true 10x to 100x value add, which was very hard to get before the entire AI space. So I think it is also very underrated in its true sense.
And you have given me actually a great segue into my next question because, of course, you are saying that vertical AI is underhyped, but Merlin is as horizontal as it gets, right? And
Yes.
we have had this conversation in the past as well, and a bunch of very interesting productivity use cases all kind of coupled together in this very easy to use product, right? And a Chrome extension. Um, let's take a step back, walk us through the backstory a little bit, right? Of how kind of this idea was conceived, and particularly because I've been in kind of cross border for so many years now, and mostly kind of India based founders don't pick up building kind of productivity tools, right, as a problem statement.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was that like I had a massive fascination for Chrome extensions. We all the three co-founders, we were working on another Chrome extension for note taking using inside meetings, but in a manual way, not using any AI. And this was like much before we had even incorporated our company, right? So and the at that time we just got around 40 users for that extension, and we were like, oh, this is still meaningful, because all other projects which we worked on, they did not even get like single digit, like double digit users, like even 10 users. So we had a massive fascination on productivity tools in general. And like, because we ourselves were users of these tools, we saw the potential of how it can truly deliver really good value, right? So when we were working on one of our previous thesis, which was around helping engineering managers be more productive in the form of building some automations on Jira and GitHub and so on using Chrome extensions, we realized that like a lot of the stuff which we are doing over there for engineering managers, along with ChatGPT, which was just launched at that time, uh, all those same workflows can like be very massively supercharged. So we were trying to build automations wherein, like, let's say if somebody's updating their GitHub PR, then their Jira ticket is also updated in a particular way, and a WhatsApp notification is triggered to the engineering manager and so on. So those kind of workflows we are trying to do, and using a Chrome extension. And we saw that like, okay, what if we make something which allows people to just have a very basic functionality, which is to use ChatGPT on any website for maybe copywriting and research, using which they can maybe fill in their Jira ticket responses or write comments on their pull requests and so on. Like, so we thought that it would be a vertical product, because we launched it with the perspective that like only engineering teams are going to use it. And and because of that, we designed the interface to be very developer centered. It was like a simple command k like interface, a command bar interface, and you can like use it to access ChatGPT on any website and rewrite content and so on. But like, because of some random coincidence, like even marketers and other people started using it, and then we realized that the application is actually very horizontal. So we did not turn out to be a horizontal company. We launched it as something designed for developers and engineering managers, but like somehow everyone started using us, and like when we put in a paywall, everyone started paying us. So it ended up becoming a horizontal product. And then when we really tried hard to like try to narrow it off and like only focus on developers or marketers and so on, we were struggling, because we realized that like when we are trying to cater to one persona, actually a lot of use cases which that persona also ends up using Merlin for, they get compromised. So a marketer might be using us for some marketing related use cases, but they also sometimes need like a general purpose research assistant, or they sometimes need like something to do just better copywriting, or like grammar editing and so on, right? So what ended up happening was that we ended up like accumulating a lot of these long tail of use cases, and our users really got annoyed when we ended up trying to verticalize, and that's why we ended up becoming very horizontal in nature.
And it sounds like it's a very organic kind of process, right? And I want to tie this back to how founders choose problem statements, right? And I think that's a very key thing right now at this point in the cycle, right? Because it's very easy to build cool AI tech. There are things that are clearly taking off. You can index on your own problem statements, be like, okay, let me be kind of whatever a dev tool company or this and that, right? And get quick early adoption. How do you advise founders in terms of how do you narrow down on the right problem statement to
Yeah.
how do you stress test that? And also tying it back to your own experience, because it could be very easy to say, hey, this Chrome extension is it just a feature?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true, and that's why there are like three ways to look at it. And I'll give a long answer, but it's a very exhaustive answer because I have thought about it for a very very long time. So there are three ways to look at how do you determine the right problem statement, right? The first and most important is whether it is a problem you yourself have legitimately faced without fooling yourself into like, oh, I have this problem. If that is not the case, then there should be somebody very close to you who should have legitimately faced that problem statement. I would like modify the YC saying of make something people want into towards like make something you yourself want. If you're able to do that in a very honest and legitimate way, then I think that's a very very big indicator that you are onto something meaningful. It's just very hard to be very honest with yourself when you're trying to start a startup and you want to like get into building products and so on, right? But that's a very important level. And even if you're yourself not a customer, let's say if you're making products for babies, then do you have a nephew or a son or daughter of your own for who can be a user and you can try out seeing their feedback directly, right? So there needs to be some very close set of users which you can iterate on a hourly or daily basis at least, right? The second, this is the most important, I think. Everything else is more logical, but this is the more emotional part of it, because if you don't address it in a strong way, then the foundation of the company or product is in itself gone. Nothing else like makes as much sense as this much, in my opinion. The second part of it is the second pillar, according to me, is to try to understand whether your problem statement addresses one of these 4 5 buckets. Whether it is a very expensive problem statement, whether it is a very frequent problem statement, whether it is a very urgent problem statement, whether it is a very cumbersome or annoying problem statement, or like it gives a very bad user experience. And when you have a lot of these things kind of check marked, then I think you are onto something very meaningfully useful, right? One example is Zepto. Zepto is a very urgent problem statement. You're trying to cook food, you don't have groceries, you want to order groceries, right? Very urgent. It's a very frequent problem statement because you are going to cook food like twice or thrice a day, or at least once a day. It's a fairly time consuming and cumbersome problem statement because you need to go to an outlet and buy groceries if you don't do it. So if you look at it, it check boxes a lot of these parameters, and that's why it's a meaningfully large business, and it has meaningful retention and like durability. If you look at Merlin, it was a very frequent problem statement because when you're trying to copyright, you need to probably do it 2 or 3 times a day at least. And when you're trying to do research, like you potentially use Google like 10 15 times a day. So it's a very frequent problem statement when you're trying to do it on browser, on different tabs and so on. So even though it's not an expensive problem statement, but because of frequency, you're able to like derive sufficient value for the end user so that they are wanting to pay for it essentially. And similarly, if you look at like most of the use cases on which ChatGPT has also kind of scaled up, those are very frequent problem statements. The largest set of categories are copywriting, research, advisory, and like somebody who has a basic degree of faith that ChatGPT is going to give you the right advice most of the times, then they're going to use it 4 or 5 times a day to get advice on, okay, how should I talk to my manager about it? Who should I hire? Or how should I write this JD? And so on. Like, so they are very frequent use cases, and that's why there is a lot of value which gets accrued. So this is the second pillar. Just to summarize, whether the problem statement is expensive, it is frequent, it is a very annoying, time consuming, has bad user experience, it is urgent. These are the 4 pillars. You can also have more pillars. It's not as messy. I think YC might have a much better answer, but I think these four pillars are kind of broadly covers the space. And in terms of the third pillar, which is a more important pillar at a slightly later stage, in my opinion, that is to understand like whether it can be a large business or not, right? because a lot many times you can build something using the first two pillars and it is a meaningfully good small business. It can be a good indie business, but whether it's a venture backable business and whether it can become durable and large, it is very hard to address. So how do you do that? And that is to look at existing parallels to what is there out in the market in order to solve the same set of problems. Now, it sounds very logical, but like, how do you look at it, right? And one of my mentors has a very good answer to this. So let's say if you look at TikTok versus Audible, right? Now, let's say as a founder in 2015 or 2010, whenever like you had the opportunity to either start TikTok or Audible, and you had to understand how the market size would be in very new categories, it's a very hard question, right? The way to do that is like, let's say if you look at TikTok, the core use case is entertainment. It's in form of videos. The alternative to videos at that time was YouTube and TV, right? So those are the broader segments. If you look at Audible, the core use case is learning plus entertainment to some degree. The alternatives is Amazon or bookstores essentially, right? So if you can also like theoretically say that even podcast as a category would have been an alternative to Audible, but it came later, so I'm not including that. But if you broadly look at it, the way in which you can kind of understand whether the market is huge or whether it has meaningful moats is to actually look at the previous generation of companies, right? So TV as a category was already massive in 1990s, 2000s, and so on, right? So you when you're replacing that as a functionality or as a use case, then whatever you are going to create has meaningfully larger value. So that's why if you compare how many people used to watch TV in 1990s or read books in 1990s, the market size for TV is going to be much larger than the market size for books, right? And that's why the market size of something like a TikTok is going to be much larger than something like Audible. So you can always have these parallels which address your problems in a much meaningful way. So let's say if somebody is trying to say that, okay, I'm making an AI companion which acts like a psychologist or a counselor, right? A easy way is that how many counselors are out there right now, how much are they charging, and why are they able to charge so much money, right? And when you're able to address those specific areas as part of your AI companion for psychology, right? Then I think for counseling, then I think you'll be able to have a meaningful understanding on whether the market is going to be large or not. So yeah, that addresses the VC or large business kind of a question. In terms of defensibility as well, there is going to be a lot of value which you can derive out of like this exercise, because typically like let's say when you are comparing Amazon versus Audible, because Amazon is defensible, so you can say that okay, Audible as a category would also have that kind of network effect dynamics which Amazon had, just out of the sheer similarity of the structure of the business, right? Similarly, when you're comparing TikTok versus YouTube, because YouTube has so many creators, TikTok is going to have a lot of them, and so there is going to be meaningfully similar sense of defensibility and so on. And on TV as well, there's so many channels and so on. So for a network provider, let's say if they are working with 200 channels, now TikTok has 2 million channels. So you can understand that the defensibility is going to scale even further in comparison to TV. So these are all like heuristical approaches you can derive to understand whether the business is large and defensible. So these are the three pillars.
Uh, Actually, Pratyush, that framework, if one kind of executes it well, it actually also improves your odds of raising money, because it's a very
Yes,
similar framework that we as investors use as well, right? And
yes.
especially, I think a lot of founders kind of lose sight of the fact that yeah, you are kind of stress testing the very sharp wedge pain point, um, the intensity of that. Can that be a product? Can that be a business? But that third part, which is
Hmm.
ultimately it's about building a big business in most cases, right? I mean, that's kind of the, or at least having a view on it, right? That is it a
Yes,
big business or not? Yeah, it's perfectly fine for it to be at a certain scale, but then you kind of need to go in with your eyes and ears open.
yes, yes. And in my opinion, that's why all the three matters quite a lot, but broadly in that order. A lot many times I see founders who specifically are in the fundraising process, they have a very strong view on the third one, but because they have not launched a product or anything, they
Yeah,
don't have a view on the first one.
yeah.
And then there is the exact opposite, which is the indie hacker category, who have very strong opinions on the first one, but they don't have an opinion on the third one, right? So I think it's better that you start with the first and then go to second and third
And
in that order. And if you are able to crack all three really well, then you're most likely building something meaningful, and you'll most likely get investments.
Yeah, yeah. And then I was, when you said that, kind of make something you want, right? That line, I was trying to reconcile it with, I just hosted Girish of Sprinto, before this, in the last episode of the podcast. And he said something very interesting where a common trap that he has seen founders fall into is to over index on your own problems, right? And I was trying to reconcile both these statements, but I think you kind of actually created the bridge between both these thoughts, which is the important thing is to be intellectually honest. I think
Yes.
you can index on your own problem statements, but you have to be intellectually honest on, hey, is this also a problem statement of enough people in the wide world out there?
Yes, yes. And I think like a good sign for that is that if you there are two signs which you can kind of like use to understand whether you are intellectually honest or not. Both are time consuming, but like I think both gives fairly good answer. First is that if you can, then try to find more people like you before you have started building, right? And second is once you have found those people, build a product very quickly and then give it in their hand. If they are not using it, then you have some signs that like it's not going to be meaningful. It's a very straightforward thing, but like a lot many times like when we don't do it and we just theoretically make a very strong pitch, it has no meaningful value. Also there is an aspect of timing, and there is an aspect of like making sure that the product which you are trying to build has sufficient differentiation or betterment versus what is there in the market right now. Now let's say you're trying to build a Zoom alternative, right? The Zoom and Google Meets, they kind of broadly satisfy the needs for most people. Now, why, even if the pain point is very deep and you have some legitimate pain with Zoom, it needs to be sufficient enough that an organization who has taken a long subscription, or like who has already like kind of like a status quo, they're willing to change their product, right? It's not enough to build a 20% better product. You need to be meaningfully better. And for that, I think when you like talk to a lot of people and everyone is saying that, oh, I hate Zoom, oh, I hate Zoom, and then you build something and they're like, oh wow, this makes sense, like I'm going to use this, then you're onto something really significant. And a lot many times it's very hard to say whether the problem which you are facing is in that bucket or not before you have done these two steps. A very good example is Linear, right? When Linear launched, everyone used to hate on Jira. It was a universal fact. You talk to any developer, out of two, probably one is going to hate Jira very passionately, right? They had a validated problem statement, at least from a social standpoint. Everyone was talking about it on socials, on Reddit, on Twitter, and so on. Then they ended up making something simple. People started using it, and like there was at least early traction to back that social hypothesis. And then they ended up like pushing forth and so on, right? So yeah, like I think these two steps are very important to also validate whether what you are feeling as a problem is real or not.
Yeah, yeah, I learned this the hard way, I think, as a founder and as an operator as well, right? I think if you're doing any alternative type of quote unquote alternative of something, and
Yes.
typically a lot of founders do, at least in the kind of pre-AI world, was the alternative to Sheets or Excel, right? And whenever I hear that, I'm like, okay, the bar immediately goes very high, right? You got to
Yes.
be then you better have been living for that problem into that problem for like 2 3 years, and
Hmm.
your product has to be at least in pre-AI. I used to say 10x better. I feel it's probably now 10x is also not good enough with the amount
Yes.
of competition that's there. So you better kind of cross the bar.
Yes, yes. It's a very hard situation to be. That's why I think it's probably easier to create a new category and like launch something which is totally new as compared to like compete in like an existing category which is very like crowded. And like even for that, like you can do it if you have a GTM edge or some kind of an edge. It's very hard that you do the same things which somebody else has done and you will have a exactly same outcome. It's not like that in the startup landscape. And that's why you need to have either a different edge or totally start in a different category.
Pratyush, coming to the product side, and I think this, in the context of Merlin, is I think going to be a very interesting part of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Coming to your, I think, initial hypothesis, the origination itself is a Chrome extension, right? And I've kind of, I think people always take very stark views of Chrome extension. I think until Honey got acquired, right, people kind of thought that, look, a Chrome extension can't be a business, right? It can't be a core product. It can be
Yes.
kind of one of the ways of getting to users.
Yeah.
But taking that on, and now I think from Merlin's perspective, now OpenAI, has launched this browser as well. So there seems to be a lot of kind of these fabric type of products, and maybe you can start from the beginning or cut to today, right? How have you and the team been thinking about defensibility, about differentiation, especially from a product perspective?
Yes, yes. First of all, it's a extremely important question, and we have thought about it for almost day in day out for a very very long time. I think there are like four macro levers around which you can build defensibility in the AI space. That's what we have kind of concluded. One is on the reasoning side, which large providers themselves are doing very hard, and requires capital and like a lot of things to make that get that into shape. Second is around data collection, or rather context collection rather, in some other way. That's where Merlin kind of got started, because we were the first Chrome extension in the world to build kind of get ChatGPT on the browser and so on. That kind of provides a meaningful edge for some amount of time. If you look at it, like even granola for that matter, when it started, it had meaningful edge for some amount of time, but now there are more players and so on, right? So if you have a unique context collection, data collection kind of an engine, then I think you have some edge for some time. Then the third area is around memory, which is like, let's say if you have been able to collect context, at least right now the world has not been able to solve memory in any meaningful way. So can you make sense out of that context? If you can make sense, then you have a much better advantage than most other players who have been able to collect context but have not been able to make sense, right? And fourth one is tool use or actions, or something on those lines. So that is like, let's say if you are a product which operates in an ecosystem of other things, right? Let's say if you are a meeting note taker, but like you have designed it for salespeople and you are going to have a much better integration with Salesforce, then can you perform actions to 99.999% accuracy, much better than anybody else out there, right? And over there also a deep expertise into that segment or industry kind of helps you build actions in a much more meaningfully strong way, right? So yeah, I think there are these four broader areas where you can have some kind of defensibility. But like, what another understanding which we have kind of developed is that most defensibilities, or most kind of moats rather, which are there in the modern landscape, are very short lived. You cannot have a moat for like 3 or 4 odd years as well, like in this environment. There are certain category of moats which are far more long lived, but they are even more harder to create. Anything around network effects is very hard to create, and if you look at it, literally there's almost nobody who has been able to create a network effect based business right now in the AI landscape. Even to that matter, OpenAI right now has data network effects, so-called data network effects, but it's very short-lived, because let's say tomorrow if Claude is like much better in terms of their memory and so on, people are going to instantly shift, right? So I think true network effects is still not there yet. Like uh, how you compare it with Airbnb or Facebook or Instagram and so on, right? So it's still not there, and probably that is the longest living category of moat out there. Apart from brand is there, but even in specifically in software, brand moats are also not as strong as compared to most of the category of moats. You might see a lot of public companies doing tremendously bad right now, even after they have meaningful brand in certain categories. Like a lot of marketing oriented public companies right now are having like 3x revenue multiple, 2x revenue multiple, after operating for 15-20 years. Why? Because mainly because the brand moat is also not as strong because of just the competition and the sheer options, number of options which are out there in the market, right? So so, to be honest, like what we have as a viewpoint is that among the four core AI native categories: reasoning, tool use, or actions rather, context gathering, and memory, the only area where there is still a meaningful scope of building defensibility is on the memory side. And that's why we have completely shifted our focus towards memory, building memory for consumers, not for B2B, but we have completely shifted our focus on that side. And if you look at generally even outside AI, then I think as a founder, the most important thing which you should probably think about is whether you can build meaningfully strong network effects into your business, or meaningfully strong brand or embedding or any of the other mode categories into your business. Another area which I sometimes worry about is that because of just the lack of data points in the AI space, even investors are not investing as much outside of the four modes which I am talking about specific to AI space. They're not as much strongly investing on building true network effect based businesses, or true embedding oriented businesses. So I think there's a lot of opportunities also for investors to relook onto those old modes essentially.
Just purely from a front end perspective, now with the kind of browser wars going on,
Yes.
um, and of course, then you have products like Merlin, so you have Chrome extensions, then you have productivity like granola kind of approaches, screen scraping or pop-ups or kind of deep integrations into existing workflows in some other way.
Yeah.
What's your working point of view right now on how front ends are going to evolve, right?
I, I think front ends are, first of all, there are two parts to it. One is whether front ends are going to stay or not. So, in terms of not staying, the answer is, a CLI kind of a thing wherein you're just prompting and everything is done. I don't think that's going to be the only future. It's going to be one of the future, but you will still have some form of browsers or some form of extensions working on top of browsers and doing the job for you, at least for the a meaningfully long time, like 5 years or so broadly, because we still have not achieved that kind of a cost structure to do everything on a virtual browser and to do it in a very very good way essentially, right? So I think at least for the next 4 5 years, based on what Nvidia is projecting in terms of GPU cost and token cost and so on, we are still going to have interfaces in some or other sorts. What we do see is there is a market opportunity for both browsers as well as for extensions. Right now we have not seen browsers really kill it, wherein like you have one browser which is meaningfully so good that everyone is going to completely switch off their Chrome or Edge workflows and kind of use that. The set of legitimate attempts are like being done by Dia, then Perplexity Comet, and then even by OpenAI right now. But what we have understood is that among the browsers, the best one so far is still Comet. Even OpenAI has not been able to truly match what Comet has been able to do based on user feedback and what we are seeing out there. And that's why Comet only has a reasonable chance to even hit there and like go totally against Chrome and win the market. We ourselves right now are taking a bet. Now we don't know whether it's going to be the right bet or not, but we are taking a bet that like Chrome is going to still survive, because even right now, with Comet making a very strong attempt, I don't think it's there yet in a meaningful way that everyone is going to switch to Comet. Like it's still like a niche product used by designers and product, basically people who are deep into AI, and who are the kind of early adopter base, and we have not seen that trickle down effect happening from that early adopter base to the larger base in a meaningful way. So that's why we are still betting on Chrome, but time will tell how things evolve, and we might need to also change our course as we see any meaningful difference of going into the browser category directly.
Yeah, and I mean, I can validate that for you as well, right? Like even for me, I've not seen a strong enough reason to kind of migrate out of Chrome, right? I've tried
Yes,
out all the other browsers, but I think that muscle memory is so hard to hard to disrupt at a
exactly.
browser level. I think there is a reason why the DOJ wanted and everyone wanted Chrome to be spun off.
Yes, I think it's very hard, and like there are lot of soft things which are outside of AI.
Yeah,
Like your passwords are stored now. You know that like okay, my passwords are going to migrate to Perplexity Comet, right?
yeah.
But until their mobile app is much better than like Chrome, you're not going to do it because you might need passwords on your mobile phone, right? Like and over there, if you don't have the saved password, then like you'll feel, oh my god, it should have been better. I should have just continued using
Yeah.
Chrome, right? So there are so many such angles which makes it so hard for people to migrate off their existing browser.
And Pratyush, from a backend perspective, how are you managing kind of the model dependence aspect, right? So, and two things, right? One is closed source versus open source, right?
Hmm.
How you guys think about that, because you are in the application layer, so you're sitting on top of these models. And second is that the layer itself is moving so fast, right? So new releases coming and new kind of capabilities being shipped out. So I'm sure there's always kind of a tussle, right, between how do you stay on top of that? Should you push out a new feature which is just got enabled because some new kind of model capabilities got released, or do you kind of keep going deep into the feature that's already working, right? There's just managing that flux. So I think both these aspects, which is choice and proportion, and kind of how to choose between these two buckets, and also managing the velocity at the
Yes.
foundational layer.
Yes. So first thing is that the more competition at the model level, the better it is for most application layer companies. And I think we have been very lucky for that matter that like right now, if you look at it, originally OpenAI was probably 80-90% of our workflow. Now it is like probably short of 50%, of our overall usage. So yeah, like I think there is a lot of advantage for application layers, and the advantage spans into multiple ways. One is when there is a model launch, it's also easy for model companies to integrate it in their products. So we typically take like 2 3 4 hours max to get the integration done or whenever there is a new launch, because most providers are trying to make their APIs very simple to integrate, and that has kind of helped us a lot. The second thing is that like while there was a lot of activity happening probably around a year back, that whenever there is a new model, there's new capabilities which get unlocked and like which were hard to do before. At least in the recent set of launches, we have not seen a lot of new capabilities being added as quickly. So probably after the reasoning models came in, and some form of embeddings and like those innovations happen at the model level. I think the now it is still like fairly stagnant, at least for the last 4 5 months. So in my opinion, like there is not as much of a difference which any new model coming out is making in our lives. We try to add capabilities on our own, which are something which we imagine should be there for our users. But like we are not forced into doing that, because now something new is coming out of at a model level, at least for the last 4 5 months, which to me is a long time. So that's one of the things. The second thing is that like uh, a, another macro perspective is that model providers are going to compete with you in some of the other form, because they're venturing into so many territories. The sheer scare the sheer fear which we have out of them coming out into a particular category has reduced, and that has happened because they are now clearly not very focused, which was not the case like probably a year ago. So I think yeah, those are some of the things. And third thing is that we also give the choice of choosing which model the user wants back to the user, right? Like we don't make that choice for them. So that's why also it's very easy. Like we just add the new model in the model selector, and the users decide what they want to do, right? So yeah, like to me, like this is not as big of a pain point, because we rather look at as an opportunity that okay, more models are coming, users have more choice, and like they can do whatever they want. And even if the model providers are copying some features or like launching some competitors, most likely after say 6 months or so, they're going to lose interest. Like if you look at GPTs for that matter, OpenAI lost interest in GPTs, and now there are two new toys which they're supposed to play with, right? Yeah, like things are relatively better as compared to probably it was a year ago.
And then how do you look at the closed source versus open source model ecosystem, either from a Merlin perspective or even just as an observer as well in the AI ecosystem?
So I think from a Merlin perspective, the good thing is that like because the costs of open source models are coming down, thanks to for closed source models are coming down thanks to open source models. We are not switching as much to open source, right? But like for the ecosystem, it's so good that open source models are really pacing up, because there are so many use cases which are very very resource intensive, and like running freemium for that matter is very hard with closed source. So you can do a lot of things very well if you have a lot of variety of options on the open source side. And I think that ecosystem is also growing very rapidly because there are so many Chinese competitors which are coming in and like launching their versions. And China is extremely pro open source right now. So I think it's a very good time overall to be in the AI space, even as compared to 1 or 2 years back, because the costs are going down. There is a lot of evolutionary pressure, both from closed source competitors and open source competitors, bringing down cost, improving value which the models are able to provide. And even for B2B or infra level companies, because there is so much open source, there are a lot of infra companies who are getting more customers, because they can kind of help navigate the costing for open source, the orchestration, and so on. So I think it's a great time overall for even infra level companies because
Yeah,
of open source.
and what I'm hearing from founders, open source kind of models are definitely putting a lot of pressure on
Yes.
the closed source models, and particularly the Chinese models. So I just did a deep tech dinner at Stanford, and we had a bunch of kind of founders over, and a couple of them were working in the procurement, supply chain, that kind of space, and they're like, look, kind of the way our product is that they're heavy users of the Chinese open source models, right?
Yes.
And there was a whole discussion around, I think Bill Gurley mentioned it recently, right, where the Chinese kind of AI research ecosystem and the model ecosystem is very closely tracking what's happening in the valley, but it's not the other way around, right? The valley is kind of very oblivious to what's happening in the
Yes.
Chinese ecosystem. So it was a very interesting insight on kind of the foundational model layer dynamics.
Yes, yes, and you can totally see it that like when there are launches happening and like the cost is going down because of open source alternatives being really good on benchmarks or whatever, in a few weeks you'll see the closed source alternative also tone down their pricing. I also saw this interesting graph that Claude has probably crossed their market share, has crossed OpenAI in terms of market share in the B2B segment. So this kind of competition is intense. Like we always are acclimatized to hearing that okay, markets are either monopoly, duopoly, or tripoly, but they're never more than three players or whatever, right? But like if you look at the entire model space, there are like probably more than five very strong players, right? Like you don't want to compete with Elon Musk on anything, but like right now he's like entering the game left, right, and center. Grok models are like, I was seeing one day that we are having so much invoicing on Grok, and like I was like, oh, is it wrong, or like are we mistakenly being invoiced so much? But like the users is like just rapidly growing even on Grok. So yeah, there is like insane degree of competition, and it's an extremely fragmented market. And I don't think that it's going to get consolidated because the capital is going everywhere, the talent is going everywhere. So there are no signs of true consolidation happening on the model layer, which was the original hypothesis with which, like 2 years, 3 years back, the market was looking at.
Yeah, it seems like it's seems to be at least right now a sort of oligopoly with
Yes.
a healthy mix of actually closed source and open source as well, right? So it actually as a venture investor it makes me very happy because I think it's very good for the overall venture ecosystem. And look, honestly, for most founders and venture investors, the value and what mostly people are building is in the application layer, right? So
Exactly.
we all are consumers of
Yes.
those capabilities. So it actually in our benefit that ecosystem is as democratized as possible.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And because there are like multiple countries also involved, it's not just innovation happening in US. So the capital, the innovation, talent, everything is kind of very distributed, and you're going to have like a meaningfully strong, meaningfully long period where probably this is going to last, wherein there's oligopoly and not like a monopoly or tripoly or whatever.
Coming to the go-to-market side, and this is where I have actually not recorded a single episode so far with the Prosumer
Okay.
founder, right? All my episodes have been with P2B, classic enterprise software, SaaS type of founders, right? So I'm very curious about this personally as well. And of course, Prosumer GTM is good, is very different, right? And of course, I mean, you got included in the A16Z list as well, 2 million plus users. So clearly, you have done something right,
Hmm.
right? So walk us through the GTM journey, the
Hmm.
iterations, the mistakes, the evolution, and now as we stand today, what is working?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest thing is that like in prosumer, the GTM is extremely binary. Like when certain channels are working, they work really well, and when they don't work, you don't have as much control of things. Like you need to figure out some other channel and scale. So and the most important channel overall is always word of mouth, because if you have good word of mouth, it translates into great conversion across all channels. Right. In our journey, when we started, we just hustled our way and launched on Twitter, on Product Hunt, and on 4 5 places. We did not even get so viral, but we got lucky that like even though we were the ninth product of the day at that time, there was one creator who kind of was a kind of a new creator at that time. He just had around 30,000 subscribers on YouTube, I think, and he kind of covered us, and his video got very viral. He probably got around 300 400K views, and because of that, Merlin got viral, and we got like
So
insane
this
traction.
was so just to clarify, this was unsolicited. Like this guy just discovered it.
Yeah, he just found out on Twitter, found us out on Twitter or on Proton or somewhere, and and he was one of the earliest people who were covering AI products. So this was much before the AI thread boys and all that era began, right? And I think his name is Brett. And he's currently working with WOP, which is like a influencer marketing platform. So he also scaled very rapidly. His channel scaled, and he got insane traction as well. And because of all that, like, we got very viral, and other creators started covering us. We had massive word of mouth. For almost 2 months, we were having around 7% day on day growth rate. Now, like, YC advises that if you have 7% week on week growth rate, it's a great metric. And we had like almost day on day growth rate. One of the big strategic blunders which we did at that time was to turn down our freemium and focus on paid users. And because of that, we ended up like losing that entire momentum which we had on the free user side. And we were not having that kind of a foresight that the cost of AI is going to go down so rapidly because of innovations on the model side, on the hardware side, and so on. So that was one of the big blunders. So in my opinion, if you're a prosumer founder and you are sitting at that kind of a growth rate, the best thing you can do is go raise money and don't stop your growth happening, because you don't get these kind of opportunities very frequently, right? And that's why I think in retrospect, whenever next we have that opportunity, we are going to completely capitalize on it and make sure that we get the distribution. It's very hard to get low cost distribution, and whenever any prosumer company has that, you should completely ride it on. A lot many times this distribution lasts. So even though at that time we had insane growth rate and so on, we had terrible retention at that time, but like the retention also improved. Like, so our churn rate right now is 1/10 of what it was 2 or 3 years back. So net we have like more number of paid users and all kinds of users in comparison to what we had at that point in time when we just started, right? So that was the organic engine. The second thing was that like we were much late to get into inorganic engine out of like that ego that, oh, we have organic working, so we are going to focus on organic. We always want to get like 90% users organically, and that's a major blunder. Again, like, if you have organic engine working, very quickly go into inorganic, because now your inorganic is going to be very charged. You're going to have massive word of mouth. Every user you're getting inorganically is going to get you 2 or 3 more users, right? So that was also another blunder that we did, and we were late to doing inorganic. But when we did inorganic, the good thing was that we started with Google ads, Meta ads, and so on. We realized very very quickly that Meta was very profitable for us at that point in time, because the competition was very low. We were almost having 1:5, 1:6 kind of CAC LTV with instant payback. So we could have scaled massively rapidly. And we did also scale, like we almost like 2x our revenue because of just Meta, giving us really good CAC rates. And I think that also ties back into organic thing, because even at that time the competition was not as huge. So because of that, like we had a strong momentum also on the inorganic side. What is working right now, and we also had a lot of waves of other channels working, like SEO kind of worked for a very long amount of time. Affiliate marketing has been consistently working. I think it's one of the only channels which is extremely reliable at scale, and you can kind of like still get like meaningful revenue when your business is having a lot of competitors and so on, because it's just a lot about relationships which affiliates have with their customers, you have with affiliates, and so on. So it's very similar to the B2B businesses
Can you
in terms.
can you give some examples of that specifically in Merlin's case on affiliate?
Yeah, so we have like probably around 20 to 30 odd very active affiliates, and because of our reputation, we have worked with them for 1.5 2 years now, and they contribute probably around 10-15% of revenues. And because so the way in which that works is like they're typically either marketers who are experts in SEO or experts in performance marketing, or they have communities, and they look at a product for a significant time, and if they feel that the product is good for their community or their audience, they end up like selling it to their audience, and they get 30% or some kind of commission out of every sale, right? And this is a very very strong channel for us, mainly because we offer 30% commissions for forever. So if the customer is getting us if the affiliate is getting us any customer, until that customer is retained, he's going to earn money, right? He or she. So we have like a lot of affiliates who earn like north of $1,000 kind of every month. And it's like, it's like a meaningfully good business for them without doing a lot of efforts, because now our churn rate is also low. So they know that like our customers are going to broadly stick, and there's a massive flywheel because of that, right? And most of the time, when an affiliate gets really good traction, they talk about it to their friends. So right now we have a lot of affiliates coming out of Vietnam, and kind of everyone knows each other to some or the other degree. That's what
And
we have.
and just to
Yeah.
understand this better, is there any difference between affiliate and influencer? Are these kind of
Yes.
in a way influencers who are kind of they're on an
Uh,
affiliate business model, basically?
there is a little bit of difference. One is that like affiliates are typically professional marketers of some other kinds. Influencers are content creators usually. An influencer can also be an affiliate, but typically influencers don't like to do affiliate deals because they are like, I want the money upfront, or like I want like more certainty around the money which I'm going to earn. So they are not as acclimatized to like doing like revenue share or something on those sorts. We do offer those kind of terms, but like influencers are not as open because they get like a lot of brand deals and they're like, okay, I want certainty with that in this video I'm going to get $5,000, $10,000, or whatever, right? So yeah. And influencers is another channel which has recently started working for us. The good thing about influencers is that first of all, it's not as competitive as a channel. If you want to do meta ads, you're fighting against the entire world. If you want to do Google ads, SEO, you're fighting against a lot of people. On influencers, specifically if you're trying to work with micro and nano and like very small creators, you're not going to have as much competition. Because the competition is low, typically the CPMs, which is like cost per thousand impressions, is very low. The hard part about influencers is that it's typically very rare that you have a particular pitch which works and works consistently for a very long amount of time, right? Most of the time, your pitch is not as good in terms of conversion. It is only good in terms of branding and so on. So how do you get a particular kind of narrative which works very well for conversions and which is consistently doable? So we got very lucky that like one YouTuber, he kind of covered us organically, and because of his coverage of one video which got like around 100,000 views, we got around $60,000 in terms of revenue. So and we had almost like 1% conversion rate, so we almost got 1,000 paying customers out of 100,000 views. So you can just imagine, and this is conversion like as in paid conversion, not like signups or something like, right? So it was massive. And we just got so lucky that like that script, when we replicated it with other creators, it kind of worked. It ended up bringing us revenue on the same script without a lot of changes, right? So I think that people should be theist and they should pray to God that for their business they are able to get such a good script, because it's very hard to create that script very thoughtfully. We were very lucky that that kind of happened to us. But if I had to imagine my way into creating that kind of a script, I would have like really struggled a lot. So yeah, like, and typically what I have seen is that for most companies where influencer marketing works, they have one consistent script which kind of like they repeat across a lot of these creators, right? So you might have heard NordVPN doing a lot of partnerships with creators, or Proton VPN and like Brilliant.org, and so these kind of companies, right? The reason they are able to do it is because for them, the whatever partnerships they are doing, they are most of the time having almost instant payback or very close to instant payback, and they are like directly optimizing for revenue conversions. So like it really works very well. And yeah, so those are some of the broader channels. Right now influencers is working very well for us, and we are building our ops engine to scale that up. And that's one of our primary channels. And the good thing is we believe that it's going to last a long time, because the number of creators who are out there in the world is so much that we can keep on doing content for a very very long time and still keep on growing, essentially.
And then on the, let's say, doing obviously 0 to 1, then a 1 to 10, 10 to 100, with all these channels that a prosumer founder kind of needs to deal with, is it about running these parallel experiments, like parallel shots on goal? Is it about, hey, there's a certain time where you kind of switch on the tap? Is there some logical kind of framework?
I think in the AI era, especially if you're venture backed, ideally you should attempt everything parallelly, because typically it's not like that. Okay, you do SEO first and then you should go and do influencer and so on. Like, it's not like that. You can start doing influencer campaigns right from day zero, ads from day zero, SEO from day zero, everything you can do from day zero. And like given like there is another thing which is specifically for Indian founders. You have an advantage on doing these kind of like random channels, which are very hard to do without having an ops muscle, right? For example, the YouTube influencer partnerships which we do, they are so ops intensive that for any US company, the employee cost is not going to make sense for them to like be able to do it. We are working with agencies, we are working with some contractors, and they are helping us do it in a more meaningfully effective way. But they are very very ops intensive a lot many times, because you need to negotiate on script, on contracts, and you need to ensure QA is done in a good way. And what I have got as a feedback from a lot of founders who have scaled campaigns to like 100, almost like 80 million in ARR and so on, right? Is that like, if you want to do it really well, you have to do it in house. You cannot do it outhouse in a more effective way, right? So you have an advantage on a lot of these channels, like for example Reddit marketing. A lot many times you need to literally just hustle your way into like doing things on Reddit consistently, and on a lot of these things Indians have massive advantage, so we should use it.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that we now have a decent enough talent pool of all this, right? I mean, the large generation of internet companies and fintech companies and even
Yes.
SaaS, India to the world SaaS companies, right? I think there is now enough trained talent.
Yes, yes, yes. I think talent is there. Though, like in my opinion, because the channels are evolving so rapidly. For example, India does not have talent around TikTok, so we need to build that. How do you do it in a more effective way? It's a hard problem. Like, only Emergent, for that matter, has been able to crack TikTok in a meaningfully strong way. So I think, yeah, like the good thing is that as companies, and what I do also feel is that we in India need these kind of rapid scalers like Emergent and InVideo and so on, because of their journey. A lot of other founders are able to like get the know-how of new channels. Like for example, InVideo was able to scale almost entirely, from my understanding, on meta ads, and on influencer partnerships, right? So to some part they also did SEO very well, but SEO was more democratized. So when you have that kind of a learning curve which you are seeing one company do, a lot of other companies are able to adopt more quickly, and like and same with Emergent, they have been able to do TikTok very well. So I think a lot of next set of companies are going to be able to do it very well. So yeah, I think that gives a lot of ecosystem learning.
And then on the monetization side, what has been the experience in terms of pricing model iterations? What did not work? What did you have to throw out of the window? And how do you see it now? And I don't know about Prosumer. Obviously, there are now a lot of new age pricing models, right? Like users based, consumption based, at least on the enterprise side or vertical AI side. What are you seeing there?
I think the biggest thing is that, like, specifically for any kind of inorganic channel, you should always optimize for getting money upfront. If you have a massive organic motion, then great. Keep scaling. Don't think about monetization right now. Focus on retention and scaling. That's it. And of course, fundraising. You need to have a lot of capital to do that. But if that is not the case, and you're primarily scaling using inorganic channels, then you need to take care of payback periods and monetization very quickly. And that's why if you look at the journey of both US and India oriented companies who have really scaled in terms of ARR, their paywalls are like very quick. They might probably directly push you to paywall without even you trying the product, right? So or with you just trying it once or twice. So the one of the biggest reasons is because the operating cost is also very high. Second reason is that you're working with inorganic channels. So yeah, like a combination of all of it kind of makes a very obvious sense that you need to put paywall very quickly. And we learned it the hard way. Like, we kind of made a lot of flows that, okay, we'll first get people to our landing page, then to our pricing page, then free plan, then paid plan, and so on. Does not work. So right now for inorganic channels, we directly tell people to buy. That's it. And not many times the user is not convinced that, okay, why should I buy, right? So you need to then build a lot of other trust factors, like maybe using influencers. We show them the use cases. The influencer, if they trust them, then they know, okay, that this person is legitimate, so the product is going to be legitimate. We show them signs of us being a legitimate company in form of, let's say, A16Z covering us, or some other like metrics around like reviews and so on. But like you need these other factors, but once you have them, just get the user to buy. A lot many times when the user also is acclimatized to using your product for free, for them to take that jump into paid plan is like, oh, I was already using it for free, why should I pay money, right? So the from a psychological lens also, it makes a lot of sense. And even if they pay you $5, $10, $20, it does not matter. If they pay you, it's a great sign. And then they can keep on topping up, and like, if your product is making more sense at $50, they'll top up to $50. You earn the right to get to $50. But I think even $1 worth of sale is infinitely better than $0, not just mathematically but also psychologically. So that's the biggest learning, I think.
And that is very interesting. That's such an interesting point. I see that even in my own behavior. I mean, as a solo GP, I'm a massive consumer of these prosumer products, right? So look at Granola, look at Descript, right, for all my podcasting stuff. And in almost every case, I had built enough trust, or I had built enough kind of ground knowledge through my research or word of mouth, that I kind of downloaded it and straight away paid for it. Like, I did not
Hmm.
go for like a, and I mean, if there was a free trial baked in, that was different. But it was, my intent was to buy it and start using it.
Exactly. And I think that really matters a lot, because I mean, like, for that matter, if I'm not wrong, InVideo sells like $1,000 kind of plans. Like, I don't know whether it is an annual plan or whatever, but they sell like $1,000 worth plans probably on their ads. If not $1,000, like they definitely sell like around $80 or whatever, like on a very high price point. So you can sell things which are very expensive, if you have done the other things right around the brand trust and so on. And ideally, the best thing you need to do, most important thing, is like, you need to make sure the product is good. Because if you get the user and then they unsubscribe, then sooner or later it's going to hit in terms of your CAC and other things, right? So yeah, like, those things are very important. Other thing is that we have not seen as much that usage based pricing is like becoming the norm. What we have seen is top ups becoming the norm. So you might see companies like Lovable, Emergent, and so on. They Emergent, for that matter, they do a lot of top ups, right? People do a lot of top ups in Merlin. For that matter, we have rate limits similar to OpenAI, and but unlike OpenAI, we offer top ups inside Merlin. Out of like every four people who hit our monthly rate limit, one of them tops up, which is almost closer to around 25% people top up on Merlin, right? On the monthly plan, on the monthly rate limit. So we there's a massive propensity for people to pay when they do feel that there is legitimate value getting out of the product, to pay more when they do that, and they don't hate the product. So it's not like that if they need to top up once, they end up going on and then unsubscribing, that, oh, this company is trying to cheat me. They have that innate understanding that, okay, AI is expensive, and like this company is giving me so much value. If I am supposed to pay them more, then let me do it. And it's better to not do a lot of like psychological hacks when the user is topping up. If they want to just top up for $5, let them do it at $5. If they top up for $50, let them do it for 50. It's better to not like just lose the user's trust and put, okay, that if you have to do a top up and you have bought us for $10, now you can only pay us $50, right? So I think those small things, they end up building a lot of trust among the users, and these kind of trust based aspect, they kind of compound. And instead of usage based pricing, which is like metered, it's better to do top ups, which are like bulk purchases, which are which would make more sense both for the user as well as for the company.
Yeah, that just seems like a more constructive
Yes.
framing on the pricing side. But looking on the flip side of the coin, right, which is in the prosumer space, what are the, for people who are not adopting these tools, right? What are their
Yes.
apprehensions? Why are people, if people are churning out, why are they churning out, right? Because we are only seeing positive news around Lovable, Cursor, Emergent,
Yeah.
Merlin, right? But what is it that the industry needs to do better on the product side?
I think there are like multiple reasons why somebody might churn, right? Like, one is that the product is not good and like they have lost weight in the category itself. Uh, that kind of reason is now decreasing. So when we just started Merlin, people, when they churn, they are like, okay, I just don't want to use it. Like, I will not use anything else. Now that percentage of people is much lesser. Right now, when somebody is going to churn, they are most likely either going to go to a competitor which is offering something for cheap, or they're liking the feature or the user interface or the brand or whatever. So they are most likely going to go to a competitor. But functional value which the product provides, that's going to get retained anyway, right? um so most likely it's like a brownfield reason why somebody's changing. And I think it's a very good position to be in. If that is the dynamic, then the most important thing as a business which matters is that your company survives, and that you are like acting on whatever be the most important feedback which the user is giving, whether it is in terms of product quality, UI, pricing, whatever, right? Like branding, whatever. If you act on it, most likely in the next cycle or next cohort, your churn is going to go down. And we have seen that, like right now, we our churn rates are like, as I mentioned, like it's almost 1/10 of what it was when we just started, and it has almost followed a monotonically declining trend. Either it has remained flat or it has declined. And the biggest factors is that model qualities improve. You act on feedback, you act on you act on your competitors launching a certain feature in a certain way, and that brings in some degree of maturity in terms of your product as well, and in terms of your competitors product as well. Now when you're both your company's products are mature, then what matters most is whose company is going to survive the longest, right? Because if your competitor gets acquired, or if your competitor is like losing track and they lost money and like they're pivoting or whatever, something bad is happening to them, then their users sooner or later they are going to find or they're going to remember that, okay, I used to use Merlin, I should shift to this company. Merlin is still there, let me go back and use it, right? So I think when the market is a little bit more stable, then like it's all about survival. When it is not stable, it's about acting on the feedback very rapidly.
Yeah. Uh, Coming to fundraising, right? And of course, you have raised multiple rounds of capital, and you've kind of also observed both the Indian ecosystem and the Valley ecosystem. For AI founders out there, right? What would be that one observation that you have that you feel is still not that well understood or is counterintuitive for a lot of AI founders out there?
Yeah, I think like there are like multiple categories of founders and people who are trying to fundraise. So there's one category of founders who have an extremely relevant background for that particular problem, and for them the fundraising journey is very smooth, very simple. Typically, like they most of the time get term sheets within 2 or 3 weeks. So it's very quick. uh, Also there's a aspect of like VC suddenly deciding that, okay, this market is hot and we want to invest. That also impacts a lot in terms of what is going to get funded or what not. I think these are two very practical realities which the 80% of the founder base which is not getting benefit out of the first these two reasons, they have to understand. And that's why like 60% of 40% of fundraising is in your control, 60% is completely outside your control. It's a very generic point, but I think a lot of people don't internalize it very well. And when you have internalized it, you're going to do certain things fairly differently. First is you're going to probably introspect very deeply that what are the spaces where I genuinely do have a massive edge or anybody else out there, in terms of building a product, building doing GTM, or building a story or whatever. And once you're able to identify that edge, then suddenly you go from that 80% to that 20%, which is going to have a much better chances of doing fundraising. The second thing is like whether VCs are deciding that, okay, your market is good or not. I think specifically in the Indian ecosystem, that matters a lot more. It's just very unfortunate. To be honest, I was lucky that my market was not as meaningfully good when I was raising for the first time. But I got the right backers who backed me, uh, for the right reasons without like getting driven by FOMO or so. But like that's not the case overall, which I see in the market. Like because you can totally see the pattern that, okay, suddenly all companion startups are getting funded, and like companions is the most important space. Suddenly middleware is the name of the game, and like every middleware company is like getting funded and so on. So I think there's a lot of like FOMO driven investing which happens. And when you are building something, at least one important practical thing, which is something not anyone is going to, well, not a lot of founders and investors are going to tell people publicly, but is very important. One practical thing you can do is to just make sure to use the right keywords for the exact same thing. So I'll give you an example that when we originally were fundraising for our engineering productivity idea, we used to articulate it that it as it's an analytics and nudges related product. Okay. And when we use the word analytics upfront, what it did was it made people compare us with like all the analytics companies like Power BI and dashboarding companies and so on. But nudges was an important part, and we were passionate about Chrome extension. We were passionate. I mean, we had built Chrome extensions before as well, and I had 10, 15, 20 Chrome extensions in my browser. So it was not like an inauthentic thing that we are saying nudges also in our pitch. But when we just positioned it differently and said that we are a nudges and analytics company, and Chrome extension is very central to our product. Analytics is only there for the engineering manager, but Chrome extension is for everyone. Then suddenly our pitch like was very different, and the VCs who were not like responding to us, they started responding to us and so on, right? So I think just the keyword difference makes so much. So whether you should say you're an AI assistant or an AI companion, if you see that like right now AI companion is the term which suddenly is there in everyone's mind, don't say it's an AI assistant. Like maybe say it's an AI companion. And like most of the pitch is like just in the first 30 second to 1 minute, like how you're describing in one line what your product does. It completely kills off the pitch, or it's going to make your pitch really strong, right? And that's why like I remember that we had probably spent around 2 days just on that one line pitch on how we want to describe. And even after that we are not able to come to the right pitch, because we said we are an analytics and nudges for engineering managers, and then we changed it to nudges and analytics, and then we changed it to virtual project manager for engineering teams. But like at every evolution, like it was very helpful for us to like spend time on that one line pitch on how we want to describe ourselves.
No, that is so true. As an investor, I kind of plus 100 to each of these points. And I think most
Yeah.
importantly, I think what you started the answer with, which is, I think to be able to understand the game as it is right now, what are the rules
Yes.
of the game? What are the various games being played in the overall, so let's call it tournament. And
Yeah.
then what is the game where you will fit in? And
Yes.
then I think that itself just it
Mm.
influences so much of how you will then approach it, how much will you raise, to how will you come across, to who are the kind of people you should talk to
Exactly.
how to create FOMO in that particular game, right? Is so that
Yes.
it all starts with first understanding and kind of
Yeah.
observing what's happening.
Exactly. And I think one other point is that like which is the difference I see between US founders and India founders. US founders are really good at storytelling, but a lot of times they're not as authentic. So the fundamental which I see around here is that if you have a great story, it does not matter if the story is true or not. You need to have a great story. And maybe that advice is not coming out of a wrong position, because storytelling is just so important. It's just so competitive. So you need to have a story. But like in my opinion, it's far better to have an authentic story than to have just any story, because like if somebody asks you why two times, like why you want to do this, why you want to do this, and so on, I think they're going to very quickly see through that you're just made up a story. And as founders, probably you're not going to hear 20 pitches a day, but as a VC, you are going to hear so many pitches that like the moment you hear anything inauthentic, you're going to have that click that okay, this is not going to make sense. It's better to have that innocence as a founder, that like okay, this guy is pure, he's like coming out of a pure situation, and like okay, he's probably 9 on 10 or 8 on 10 on storytelling, but like at least I can trust this person because this person is not telling anything in authentic, than to be 11 on 10 in terms of storytelling and not be authentic.
Absolutely. And then I think coming to the very specific lens of a cross-border founder, a US India cross-border founder, what is
Yeah.
that one hard-earned lesson that you would like to share with them?
I'm still learning lessons, so I don't have any major insight on this front. I think one very big thing is that people should have extremely low ego and be willing to do whatever it is required to make the business, whether in terms of getting customers, fundraising, or whatever, be successful. A lot many times I meet people who are like, okay, I want to get into YC, what should I do? I was rejected in terms of application or in the interview or whatever. I think like it's impossible for anyone to reject if they see that we have to fund this person, otherwise this person is not going to go away, right? So I advise people that why don't you just go and stand in front of the YC office with a poster of what you're doing, if not, if you'll not get investment, you'll probably get like customers and so on, right? Like, so you're anyways going to get an advantage, and you have nothing, right? Like, you have no two, probably one or two beta customers or like logos, whatever, right? So standing in front of a YC office and like, with a poster and whatever, like, of what you're trying to do, it's a very cheap way for you to either get customers or investors, right? And the good thing is that you can at least do that in SF in India. If you do that, you're not going to get customers, neither investors, because I think like there's not that kind of a cultural environment in India that people respect that kind
It's
of a hustle.
a low trust society. Yeah.
It's a low trust society. Whereas over here, if you do those kind of things,
Yeah.
probably people are going to be like, oh, this founder is willing to do this to get customers or investors.
Correct.
Like, let me back this person, right?
Correct.
And I think that is the biggest learning, that like be willing to do anything required, anything morally right required to make your business successful.
Great. Final section, Pratyush. And I don't do this very often, but you are an incredibly insightful founder, and that too in Prosumer. So I think I want to do it in this episode, which is a
Okay.
rapid fire. And
Hmm.
so hopefully it should be fun. Are you up for it?
Yeah, I'm totally up.
Okay, cool. So uh, quick answers. Okay, as quick and crisp as possible. Okay, first, one underrated advantage of building from India.
Um, you get really good, really talented people who want to learn things 0 to 1, instead of people who have playbooks in their mind.
One overrated AI trend right now.
I think companions is fairly overrated, even though we are also broadly in that space, but it is fairly overrated.
The metric you care about most internally.
I think churn.
Favorite AI product other than your own.
I have a lot of answers. I think Whisper is one which I really like, but I've referred to Superpowered, which is the tool which helps you respond to meta ads and so on. There are so many tools, like, but Whisper Flow is probably the best.
And final question, a moment that where you almost killed the product or you killed the company, but you did not.
So this was right before we decided to put in a pricing, a paywall on Merlin. So really 1 month into building Merlin, we had massive bills coming in because like of just the sheer free user usage, and we are like, okay, we raise money for this slightly different thing, and we have some beta customers for that different thing. Why are we working on Merlin, right? And we just kind of pushed through to get a paywall and see whether people want to pay or not. If we did not do that, most likely we would have killed the product. And I think if you have even a little bit of conviction, it's better that you go all the way in and probably lose than to like leave it like in the mid and potentially not win. So like yeah.
No, that's a great story. The highlights very well the ups and downs of a founder, for a founder's life. It's been amazing. Thank you so much, Pratyush, for taking out time. I think again, as I kind of opened the pod with, right, I think this is going to be incredibly useful insight, especially I think for prosumer AI founders anywhere in the world, and also with the nuance of cross border. So thank you so much for taking out time.
Thank you so much, Soumitra. I really loved having this chat, and I really hope that a lot of people are inspired to like try out prosumer products, because as a user myself, I really love when there are new products which I get to play around with and hopefully pay someday as well. So it would be really good if India produces a lot of prosumer tools and like we get more optionality. So yeah, and thank you so much for inviting. It was lovely chatting.